English or Spanish. Please stay in this channel for the whole session. All right, let's get started. The chat is turned off for this session, but questions about how the meeting will work or technical issues can be shared in the Q&A. If you have any questions or comments to share about local minimum wage, please, you can raise your hand after the presentation using the option on the menu bar at the bottom of your screen. We will promote you to panelists so you can ask your question to make ask your question or to make a comment. When you're promoted to panelist, please remember to unmute yourself. You may also use the Q&A function in the chat to ask your question. Please note that this session will be recorded in English and Spanish and posted to Boulder County Commissioners' YouTube channel. And as a reminder, commissioners are hosting a public hearing at 12 p.m. on November 2nd. This can be attended in person at 1325 Pearl Street in Boulder, online via Zoom or by your phone. Registration details can be found at www.boco.org/minimum wage. Again, my name is Matt Eldred. I'll be facilitating this evening. I am the president of the Human Service Alliance. The Human Service Alliance is an organization of about 70 nonprofit human service agencies providing safety net and essential services throughout Boulder County and in partnership with Boulder County. Tonight, we also have Commissioner Claire Levy, who will be giving our presentation and then also be able to answer any questions. To begin tonight, I'd like to just give you a little bit of background about the Human Service Alliance and what we've done as a membership organization, really to address this issue and learn from our community about how this is impacting us across Boulder County. So we did a survey, and the survey results, I have a quick slide to show you on the screen here. Our survey results indicated that of the 70 organizations, we had about a 46% rate, 32 respondents responded, and of the respondents, 78% of them responded favorably to support 15%, 1569 minimum wage increase in Boulder County. Maybe during our Q&A session, some of our participants tonight might want to ask questions about some of the positive or negative impacts of what we're talking about tonight. But to get you started and let you think about some of those questions, I want to turn it over to Commissioner Levy tonight to be able to share some of the information and then allow you to answer some questions. So Commissioner Levy, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Matt, so much for setting this up and for kicking off this listening session. I want to thank Matt and the entire Human Services Alliance for making this time. So I'm going to start with just a few slides to provide the context for what we are doing here at Boulder County and the opportunity that other municipalities all across Colorado and counties have. So in 2019, the legislature passed a bill that allowed local governments to adopt a local minimum wage. Prior to that time, there was a preemption. There was a law in place that said that there can only be one single statewide minimum wage, regardless of the variation in the cost of living across the state. Everybody has to operate under the same minimum wage. So that changed effective in January of 2020. And what the bill provided was that local governments can raise their minimum wage up to 15% above the previous year's minimum wage as a starting point, and then establish what the increments of increase will be going forward. It also requires that there be a tip credit of $3.02 an hour for tipped workers. And that's consistent with the state tip credit. So local governments aren't allowed to eliminate the tip credit. We're not allowed to make it bigger or make it smaller. We have to do that $3.02 an hour. It does allow for a 15% reduction in the minimum wage for unemancipated minors if we choose to do that. And it does not allow us to carve out any business type. So whether you're for-profit, not-for-profit, whether you're large, whether you're small, regardless what sector you're in, it has to apply to all businesses across the board. Next slide, please. So Denver was the first local government to adopt a local minimum wage, and they did that in November of 2019, and it became effective January 1st, 2020. And any local minimum wage has to take effect, or can only take effect, on January 1st of the following year. So on January 1st of 2020, the local minimum wage in the city and county of Denver rose to $12.85 an hour, whereas for the rest of the state, it was $12 an hour. And they are going forward with increases in the CPI from that time forward. Edgewater was the second local government to do that, and they acted just this past May. So January 1st, 2024, Edgewater's minimum wage will be $15.02 an hour. Next slide. And Edgewater has a schedule for when they will catch up with the city and county of Denver. So why would the Board of County Commissioners decide to go ahead and raise the minimum wage now? And the answer to that is that we are hearing just unprecedented demand from our family resource centers. I know we have somebody from Sister Carmen here with us this evening. We have someone from EFA, Julie Van Domlin is with us from EFA. We're hearing from them about the unprecedented demand for services across Boulder County, partially in response to inflation and the rising cost of housing, and the fact that wages are not keeping up with the cost of living in Boulder County. A family of 4 needs the equivalent of 4 full-time minimum wage earners just to meet their basic needs. And so we felt that that now was the time to act. The Department of Labor and Employment was required by law to study the impact of any increase in the local minimum wage. And they found that with respect to Denver's increase, there has not been any decline in employment in the city and county of Denver, nor has there been a decline in sales tax receipts since they adopted a higher minimum wage. And so we felt that there really were no countervailing economic arguments against that. Next slide, please. So what we will be doing effective January 1st is raising the minimum wage just for unincorporated Boulder County to $15.69 an hour. And that represents that full 15% increment that we're allowed to do. It will be $12.67 an hour for tipped workers. And it will apply to all employees working in unincorporated Boulder County for 4 or more hours per week. Enforcement will be handled by the Department of Labor and Employment, which is consistent with what they do right now for the state minimum wage. Next slide, please. So as you've probably heard already, many of the municipalities in Boulder County are currently considering what they want to do with the opportunity to have a local minimum wage. They have determined that they will not increase their minimum wage until January 1st, 2025 at the earliest. And so one of the issues that we are taking public comment on, and we've had a survey out that closed last week, and we'll take public comment at our hearing on the 2nd of November, is where should we end up? Ideally, what we would like to have is a consistent minimum wage throughout Boulder County. And so we put 3 proposals out for comment. and you see those on the screen here. The first is to sync up with Denver's minimum wage. We did not specify a period of time over which that would happen. If we took that course, that would move this area towards having a regional minimum wage that might possibly be effective all across the Front Range. Another option is to move towards the livable wage that Boulder County has enacted for our own employees. So at the current time, no one working for Boulder County, regardless of the job that they hold, makes less than $22.44 an hour. And then the third proposal is to adopt the proposal of the Self-Sufficiency Wage Coalition, which is to reach $25 an hour by 2028. Those are the things that we've put on the table that we've requested comment on. That's what we'll be considering at our hearing on November 2nd. And I believe that is the last slide. Yeah, and so I'd love to hear the questions or comments from members of the Human Services Alliance. Your thoughts and concerns are very important to me, and I know to my fellow commissioners. So I think, Matt, we're ready for you to take it over.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Levy. Again, you can type your questions in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question. And I also have a couple of slides from the Human Services Alliance that we might show up on the screen for the participants tonight, giving you a little bit more detail and information about the survey results that I shared with you earlier. But first, I'll open it up if there are any questions in the chat or if there are any questions in the audience that you'd like to raise your hand. And I see one raised, and so I'll call on you. And Julie Van Domelen, I think you are up first. You can unmute yourself.
Thanks. I'm going to jump in and then I have to jump off because I'm actually at an event for AFA, so in my car. Yeah, I want to thank the commissioners for their commitment in this area. We've spoken to this on many occasions, just what we're seeing in of AFA's doors, the doubling of people coming through the food bank, the long and kind of insatiable need for emergency rental assistance so people don't lose their homes. Community-wide, we're seeing much higher rates of family homelessness where people have lost their housing. And so it is a critical moment. And we did a survey at EFA, and a quarter of the respondents said they made less than $15 an hour that come to EFA for assistance. So I often hear, well, no one really pays that. And I can just say that when we've surveyed folks, there's a lot of people in need that are working full-time and making less than $15 an hour. So they would benefit from that. I'm also an employer, so I do understand the need to have some visibility on this. In fact, many of you know that the Colorado labor laws have been changing over the last few years for exempt employees, where it's gone from 40,000 to 50,000 to 55,000. Those have been big lifts for us. So I think using those same strategies, how you make that happen, I think that we can support, you know, the conversations in our nonprofit community. EFA has taken a specific stance to Commissioner Levy's last question. Our board has approved our position, which is catch up to Denver. Because we feel like that is the most reasonable. I mean, obviously we'd love to have people be at self-sufficiency, but those are pretty high numbers that scare a lot of businesses and nonprofits off. And I think since Denver has such a head start, it would be a number of years before you could even catch up to Denver. There's a real reason to have a consolidated minimum wage across the Denver metro region. And then you can always consider going above that and, you know, take stock. But I think you've got an easy, you know, and clear 4-year path to catch up with Denver. And I would try, and I do think the county has an incredibly important role to play in bringing the municipalities of Boulder County together on a, you know, IGA and a more consolidated approach. Thanks.
Super. Anything you wanted to respond to, Commissioner Levy?
No, I had not planned to respond after
Okay,
each, unless there was a question for me.
no,
I'm here to listen and I'm taking notes as people talk.
perfect. Thank you, Julie. Okay, I see another hand up from our attendees. Is it Jorge? Is that who has their hand up, I believe? Yes, okay, Jorge. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, Commissioner Levy. Thank you for, first of all, my name is Jorge Santiago. I'm the director of El Centro Amistad, a nonprofit organization that really works supporting Latino immigrant community in Boulder County. So I want to speak on that too. But first of all, I want to thank the commissioners for really making this issue a reality for a lot of workers in Boulder County, because speaking from the immigrant community, as you know, the immigrant community is one of the lowest paid workers in the whole county. And we know this because we work with these families, and those are the families that we refer directly to EFA, to Sister Carmen, or to our center. Because they cannot earn enough to really have a decent living, situation for their families. We send them over there for support for payment for rent, utilities, and food. So raising the minimum wage, that we definitely support the 15% increase, but I also say $15, looking is still low. I agree with Julie in terms of what strategy we should be thinking about. For me, we'll be jumping to the $25 period. We can actually solve that at this moment, because $15 is still a very low wage for a lot of families, individuals in this county. I will go with what the majority will prefer, and we'll think that one catching up with Denver will be ideal. But we can speed it up to get to the $22. It will be incredible, supporting all workers, especially the immigrant workers in our county, that really they deserve their a living wage. We've been fighting for this for years for them, and I think now is the moment to really take a step forward and really make it happen. I really appreciate your support and for this, Commissioner Levy, and we're looking forward, for anything that we can do, to really get the word out and making sure that the implementation of that minimum wage, including with or not us and nonprofits, we get the community to the level that they deserve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jorge, and thank you for your work. Okay, we have another hand up in the audience. We'll promote you to the presenter screen and then ask you to unmute. I'm looking, yes, it's Laurel. Hi, Laurel, good evening.
Hello. Hi, Commissioner Levy. Thank you so much, Matt, for doing this. And Jorge, it's great to see you. I'm from the Immigrant Legal Center of Boulder County, and this is a day we have waited for, I think, 24 years now. I think we started talking about living wage coalition, Boulder Living Wage Campaign, back in maybe 1999, and we started it at Amistad Center way back then. So I am very glad that we're taking this step. And I agree, catching up to Denver probably makes the most sense. It's going to make it the easiest for the other municipalities to join in. I just also had a thought about ways that perhaps the county could help the nonprofit organizations that are funded by the counties. Some of us are very small, and we work very hard to make sure that our employees are making a living wage. But there are some things such as health insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance. If there were some way that the county could include the nonprofit funded community as part of the county insurance plans, that would be such an enormous benefit And it would make life so much easier for nonprofits. Maybe this is too fresh for me because I was just reading our new dental and vision plan information.
Yep.
And we can't offer orthodontia for, our very valuable employees, 9-year-old daughter, because we don't have enough employees. So if there was some way that the county could really look at us as providing the very human services that, are public goods, they are part of public provisions, that would make it a lot easier for the nonprofit community to be raising the wages for our employees.
I do want to respond, Laurel. Thank you for that suggestion. I will ask that question. We have, I'll say right now, I'm sure we cannot do that effective January 1st because we've already made those decisions about our benefits. And I think it will take, if it's even possible to do, it would take some time to study that and figure out what the structure is. But I really appreciate that suggestion and I will take that back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. It might be a good time.
Matt froze for me. Did he freeze for anyone else?
Looks like we just lost him.
Oh,
Hi, Commissioner Levy. This is Gloria Handyside from the Commissioner's Office. Yeah, we did lose Matt. Hopefully he hops back on. We'll give him a second. I think he was asking me as well to pull up their presentation that he wanted to go through some of the slides. So I will just do that now so everyone can have a look since we're since we're waiting for him. So
okay. Nikki is telling us that Matt is back in. So who has the power to promote Matt to panelist?
I do. I can do that. Let me just double check. There he is. He should be back in now. Matt, you just need to turn on your camera and you should pop back up. There you go. And I've got your presentation up as well.
There we go. Thanks. I think I got demoted back to an attendee, which that's not the worst thing that's ever happened in my life.
Which slide were you wanting from your presentation?
Number three, because I think it speaks to Laurel's point of some of the benefits. Yeah, number 3 right there. So just to give you a sense, of the surveyed folks from the Human Service Alliance, it equated to about 2,100 employees, 2,140 FTEs in the community. And again, that's about 46% of all of the human service organizations in Boulder County. And I think these numbers are really, I think it says two things. One, I think it says a testament to what Laurel and what Julia both said, is that as nonprofit human service providers in the community, we aim to make sure that our employees are at a living wage. And so you can see that about 59% of those employees already are over $18.04 an hour. So about 1,200 of those 2,100 employees, so 59%. So again, as I think several have already mentioned, that they're very much in favor of a 15% increase, and have already done that as organizations. But I think to Laurel's point around benefits, I just also am looking at our benefits that are renewing as of December 1st. And it's a 8.7% increase. And again, we're a small organization of less than 50 employees. And I do think it is something that we can continue to talk about as human service providers, providing in partnership with the county human service services. Is there a way, and again, I don't think that this would be the burden of the county to do, but is there a way that human service organizations might be able to partner with the county in pooling our resources together to be a part of county employee benefit packages that in a way might help us to be able to offer better benefits at a lower cost? Again, I don't think any of us are saying we want the county to pay for benefits for all human service agencies. But I do think those are good food for thought for future discussion, and especially when we're talking about, 2,100 employees that are, again, most nearly 60% are already making over $18 an hour. So I do think that was a really good point that Laurel and I think Jorge were both alluding to, and I hope that these slides and these numbers are helpful in sharing that information.
Yeah,
I can continue with a couple more questions, but I want to leave it to the attendees in the room. Are there any other attendees that had their hand raised or questions in the chat that I'm missing? Otherwise, I'll throw out a couple. Okay, thank you. So Commissioner Levy, there were a couple from the survey of the Human Service Alliance providers saying that, again, you can see that most of them are paying over the $15.69 an hour that's being proposed, the 15% increase. And again, most are in favor. There is a concern, however, about the theory of what happens if we get to livable wages, where some even of our employees are on assistance programs like Head Start, Medicaid, CCAP, some of those things. Is there the concern that some of these minimum wage increases could have a cliff effect where folks could lose some of the essential benefits that they have currently? Have you heard anything about that from other communities, or what is the impact of that or the concerns around that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. That's a fantastic question, and it comes up in any discussion about minimum wage. It came up in 2016 when we did the statewide campaign to increase the minimum wage. And it is a very real potential consequence of raising the minimum wage. It's one I think we've struggled with a little bit, but I guess my answer, this is not going to be an answer that may be satisfying to everybody, would be that on balance, because it's better for everybody to earn a fair amount of money for an hour of labor, and that we the benefits that are available often are not entitlement programs. And so while somebody may see their income rise up to the point where, say, they're not eligible for CCAP any longer, because we can't serve everybody with CCAP who needs it, it's going to really benefit the vast majority of people who are in that low wage category. So, there's always a tension there, but I think for us, on balance, we would rather have people earning a fair amount of money and employers paying people fairly for their wages.
Right. Yeah, thank you. And I had a question sent to me about the 15% increase and every year, getting to the $25 an hour. And so the question was, what is the desire of the commissioners to continue to raise the 15% every year and not just 1 year? Is that projections for continuing the 15% to get to the what is that, 2028, $25 an hour?
That is, we have not made that decision. So that's what we asked in our survey, along with a lot of other questions. And that's what we'll be very interested in hearing about during our public hearing that we have on November 2nd, whether we continue to do the maximum increase of 15% year over year, whether we take a longer period of time to get to wherever we go and what that endpoint is. We've not made that determination. I think I would be very, very interested in hearing from this group about what they think the impact of successive years of 15% increases would be, because I know, having been the executive director of a nonprofit organization myself, that your grant money and your donations don't necessarily increase at 15% year over year. And I think in our survey responses, the sector that seems to have the most concern about affordability of a minimum wage increase is the childcare sector. The one that you're in yourself, Matt, and
sure.
Whether they would be able to afford that and not have to raise their rates to the point where it's unaffordable. So yeah, this is what we need to hear about, is what should our rate be going forward.
Right. And I think that as most nonprofit executives, at least in the Human Service Alliance, we share that same tension of yes, we want to pay our employees better, and we don't want them to lose benefits that they have, or we want them to be able to continue to live in this community that they work in. And yet we know that we can't continue when 80 to 82% of our expenses are payroll and benefits. Those have impacts to the organization that then you need to find offsetting ways to generate revenue to support those, major expenses that you have. So we share your tension as human service executives of wanting to do the best for our community while also wanting to make sure that we maintain the financial sustainability of the organizations. Where's that balance? And there certainly is tension. Yeah. I had a couple of other slides that I just wanted to show because, again, there are folks that did participate in the survey. One of the things that we asked was, on slides 5 and 6, we really asked some open-ended questions about what would be some of the positive or negative impacts to this. And so, again, we'll share out this information. It's obviously will be in the recording, but we'll share it out as well. And so I won't go through all of these, but I just wanted to share some of the negative impacts and some of the statements. Mostly it's not around a lack of support, but it's really a concern of what a couple have already mentioned is how do organizations continue to support the major expense of their employees while also trying to offset the revenue. Where does the revenue come to do that without increasing those of us that can have fees for services, doing that in a way that is still manageable for people. So it's really about livable wage and affordable services, right? It's that tension. So that's where most of these comments I think are there. And again, we can share these out. But again, some of the positive comments that I wanted to share on the next slides. Some of the positive increases there were really around major increases in payroll above and beyond potential fundraising efforts. Those are some of the capabilities that as human service organizations, we want to make sure that we do that. But you can see some of there that, again, most of the organizations are at or above the first 15% proposed increase. But you can see some of the comments there. And I just wanted to leave these up on the screen again, not because they're necessarily questions, but comments, both potential positive and negative impacts of a minimum wage increase. And so I'll just let you read some of those on the screen, but it really is around payroll versus revenue, funding versus the major expense. And so anyway, I thought really good feedback, and hopefully these are helpful to our county as we continue to move forward with other listening sessions. Is there anybody else that has their hand raised or questions in the audience? I'm reading through the chat. There is a question in the chat. Okay. The question is, might it be possible to have our county contracts increase at the same rate the wage increases in the future? So again, it gets back to the county of, if we're increasing wages, could there be some increases in contracts and funding from county human services funding for the increases of the major expense?
Yeah, and I know we've had requests from the Human Services Alliance in the past for increases in the contract. So just for everybody's benefit, most of the contracts that we are able to fund, and possibly even all of them for the Human Services Alliance, come from the Human Services Safety Net property tax that we have. Actually, not all of them. Some of them are just general funded, and some of them come from other sources. But that that's a finite amount of money that we try to distribute as equitably as we can across all the areas of need in Boulder County. And because it is property tax funded, it's a very stable source of funding. And while our general fund is limited by state law to increasing only 5.5% per year, because this was a special voter approved increase, it's not limited in that same rate. It can go up as property values go up. We've been discussing among ourselves whether, given inflation, increased costs that everybody is experiencing, whether we want to limit that increase in the HSSN fund to something below what it would just naturally be. And we haven't made a final decision on that, but we probably are not going to collect the full amount that we could. And I'm giving that background just to say that that is a finite amount of money. And I think what we would want to see is for, some of your organizations, I think you mentioned, over 80%, 85% of your budget may be personnel. For others, it may not be. And so a 15% increase in the minimum wage may not necessarily be a 15% increase in your budget. So I think we're going to want to look at that very carefully. We don't necessarily have the room right now to do that, but we understand that costs are going up regardless of what we do with the minimum wage, and we want to see what we can do.
Thank you. So yes, I think as you heard earlier, costs for employees, we're trying to stay up with that with a livable wage for employees. But also, I think as Julie alluded to, most human service agencies, especially through COVID, Marshall fires, we've seen an increase in the need for the services, and maybe even a different demographics of folks using the services that we've typically seen over the years. We've seen an increase in those services and from a lot of different sectors around our community. And so are there any kind of another question that came in, are there any kind of words or advice or wisdom that you can give to agencies who think that they would be negatively impacted by this increase?
Well, I don't know. That's a tough one. Well, because I don't want to presume that I know best for them on how to manage their budget.
Right.
Every organization has a different funding structure. Every organization has a different donor base or different philanthropic organizations. I think what I would say just in general is that almost, I think it's fair to say every time there's been a proposed to increase the minimum wage in Colorado, which heretofore has had to take place at the ballot because the state minimum wage is in the Constitution, people have been concerned about an increase in unemployment. They've been concerned about the cliff effect, and we haven't actually seen that come to pass as a result. We've not seen large layoffs. We've not seen a lot of nonprofit organizations have to close their door, and maybe my response applies a little more to the hospitality industry than it does to the nonprofit sector. But there is some data that some of the very, very small nonprofits may struggle because they don't have a lot of cushion, and they may not really be very well established and have a secure donor base at this point. But the more established, long-standing nonprofit organizations have been able to come through it.
Right, that's great. I do want to be sensitive to time, but we do have a few more minutes, and I have a question in the chat that maybe we can talk about some next steps. But the question is, what is the priority for this issue going forward, and what will be the future work plan, both for implementation and ways that people in this listening session might be able to support or continue to be involved in this work moving forward?
Yeah, happy to answer that. So, first of all, we are taking public comment at the hearing on November 2nd, starting at noon. And so it would be great to get, any comments that people want to make on the record through that medium. Our main work going forward after November 2nd, when we will determine what our future target is and the rate of increase, will be to work with the municipalities in Boulder County to find out where they're going and what their path is for increases over time, so that we can get together and have a countywide minimum wage. So that'll be the work once we've done ours, is to work with them so that we can be on the same page. Although we will enact an ordinance, and it will be effective January 1st, and it will say what we intend to do. That doesn't mean we can't amend it in the future. So I want to be very clear on that. that we, we can express what our intention is, but I guess I'm only one commissioner here saying this. I think for me, it's a very, very high priority that we get to a county-wide wage as quickly as we can, just for the sake of consistency and lack of confusion, because there is that provision that even if you may be based in a municipality, but your workforce does work in unincorporated Boulder County, if they do 4 hours or more, they have to be paid our minimum wage. And I do think that could be very complex for some of our businesses. And I'm thinking about landscape industry in particular, some of the food service industry, and those where I'm just sensitive to the complexity of that.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. I'm not seeing any more hands raised or questions in the chat. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Okay, thank you. Well, again, thank you, Commissioner Levy, for the listening session tonight. And again, from the Human Service Alliance, it's really nice to be able to feel like a partner in this and to be able to give feedback. And I think from at least the organization, we really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the conversation. And I hope the data is helpful that we're able to share with the county from our constituents that are providing these safety net basic and essential services across Boulder County, as well as employing, well over, 2,000 employees who are both residents and, financial contributors in our community. And so I think I just want to conclude by saying that it's the same tension that I think we all as executives of human service providers, it's a tension that we, wrestle with daily. How do we make sure that we can pay the folks that are doing the great work, as well as be able to continue to afford the services and to be able to deliver the services at an accessible and an affordable rate that it seems that more and more folks in our community are needing. And so I think that's going to be the constant tension of how do we do better with less? How do we partner, and how do we continue to communicate and collaborate so that all can benefit from living in this wonderful county that we live in? So thank you for your time and answering the tough questions.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that was a really outstanding summation of where we are and what we're trying to do, and the value that members of the Human Services Alliance provide to the people of Boulder County. We are so appreciative of the work that all of your members do, the services that you provide to vulnerable and low-income people in Boulder County, and really appreciate that. And I want to thank you for doing the legwork to arrange for this listening session. It's been very helpful and valuable to me.
Right. Thank you. And then as a reminder to everybody, I want to, again, as Commissioner Levy said, the public hearing is 12 o'clock on November 2nd. And again, that's a good time for public comments. So again, put that on your calendar, and you can go to the county website to get more information about that. And I just want to again give the website at www.boco.org/minimum wage for more information about this. And I've already been to the site, and there are other listening sessions already posted there that you can hear more information from other groups like this. So I really appreciate what the county has done to be transparent, and also to be providing the most recent and up-to-date information from our community. So thank you for being a part of this, everyone, for coming tonight, and look forward to talking about these very important issues moving forward.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.